Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Frank's Fish Room. Today we're going to teach you a little something about how to make a proper shipping box. The first thing in a proper shipping box is we want to have this label. We want to have a 275-pound weight-rated box. And you can basically stand on this box when it's all packaged. 275 double wall, so this has two separate walls. This makes for a very strong box. If you read any of your instructions and your regulations, it says that we're supposed to be shipping in these boxes for all live animals at using all methods of shipping. So we're using a legal box. They're not cheap. You can get them from, not that I want to promote anything, but you can get them through Uline. Very important to note that this box is not 10 by 10 on the outside. When you take your box and you ship it, if you ship it as a 10 by 10 box, you're going to have a problem because this box is actually 10 and a half, and they count the bulge by 11 by 10 and a half. So when you ship this 10 by 10 box, you're going to want to ship this as an 11 by 11 box. Otherwise, you're going to have some problems. Always leave a little room so that you don't end up with a problem for the person you're shipping to or yourself. You end up with additional charges, your box will get delayed, it'll get slowed down. I use a styrofoam, which is available through any home center store. It's usually in an insulation section, and this is designed to fit between a 16-inch on center stud. So it's a little narrow, we end up throwing a lot of it away. It's about 3/4 of an inch thick. It's pretty common. You can cut your own, or you can order it pre-cut, but then you have to store it, which is a problem. You end up having to get a truck full of it, and it's a little more expensive. And then if for some reason you have to use a different size box, or your box sizes change, or your carrier says, oh, you can't ship this way anymore, you're going to end up with an awful lot of pre-cut stuff, which was convenient, and now may or may not be landfill material. So you decide how much you're shipping and whether or not you want to use pre-cuts. I don't use pre-cuts because I sure am a victim of all this box changing sizes. So you want to cut, you want to be pretty tight. This is the bottom one, fit into there. We'll go back to the box a little bit. They want this box to basically have an M design or an H taping, which is, I do 2 layers here. Whoops. I do 2 layers here, one across, which they may or may not really like in a gloss like this because it can slip on their belts. And then you tape the sides also. And as an added precaution, which they don't require, it's not stipulated, I also do a tape across here and a tape here. Because I see that if the box bulges or gets compressed, that this could be a weak point, and you don't want your box to fail and dump your contents on the ground, because nobody's going to repackage your fish. You're responsible for that. You should also note that we're shipping live fish, and it's a privilege. So when we pack these boxes, we want to make sure that we take responsibility, because the shipper doesn't know whether or not we're packaging these correctly. They don't know what kind of fish. They don't know that if this thing's leaking, it's going to dump on the ground and cause delays and cause your fish to die. So if we're going to ship fish, we should be responsible. We shouldn't expect that if we do a half-assed job of boxing this and it dumps on the ground, that we're just going to get our package insurance, because that's the way that we get ourselves banned from shipping live fish, by not taking care of ourselves and being responsible. So I pre-cut a lot of this stuff to make this so this isn't like an epic, you know, a 15-part mini-series here. And so I pre-cut some of this. I'll just sort it out a little. But here's my wider side. I try to make them pretty precise, but if you don't, it's not going to really matter too much, because you're going to put a lot of newspaper in here, because they require a lot of newspaper. And you really like this side to fit relatively tight, and you want this side to fit relatively tight. So we end up with a tight package. You're going to want to cut a little shorter. And one thing you should know about this box, this 275-pound box, is it really does not like to fold back on top of itself. So when you are prepping this box, pre-flex these flaps down into the box on all of the 8 different flaps, so that it has a little bit of malleability and it can get as flat as possible. And try to undercut your styrofoam a little, because you can see the reason this is pushing up on me, I'm actually undercut by 1/4 of an inch. And the reason it's pushing up is because that bottom of that box is acting a little funny. And we're packing this box to go basically overnight in cold weather. How cold? That's really up to you. You get to a certain point, and luck and prayers is what you're running on. So if you're going to ship in January and it's 25 below zero outside, you better have a whole pocket full of luck and prayers, because it's going to be very difficult to get that box there alive. So as we're packing this for cold weather, and this is going to be a 2-part video, just so you guys know, because I didn't want to, I'm not actually shipping the fish today, and I didn't want to make this into a mini series. You need about 1.5 pounds of paper for 1 pound of water is what they require. You get to the point where, why don't we just stuff a Tribune into this thing and ship it? Because in this size box, 1.5 pounds of paper becomes a stack like this thick. I've measured it, and it's ridiculous. You're going to end up probably with about 3 pounds of water. And to think that you have to put 4.5 pounds of newspaper in here when this is probably about 1/2 pound, that's kind of insane. So I packed this down into the bottom here and fit this. It does 2 things. It insulates my bottom, and it also serves as a wicker. It'll wick up some of the water. And the next thing you do is I'm packing for winter, which my winter stops at about November 15th, because then we get into the Christmas season, and you know, unless you're a big company and you're shipping a lot and you really need that income, you may not want to ship. You may not want to ship when it's very cold. You'll end up with some casualties, and unless you can absorb those casualties and those extra shipping fees, you really shouldn't be shipping. So I make this so that I get an airflow, because I'm going to put a heat pack in here. You don't want a heat pack that's going to operate at 100 degrees right up against your fish, because while that heat pack, when it's 40 degrees outside and the box is losing its energy, will keep them fish nice and warm when it's 40 degrees and it won't overheat it. If you put that pack right up against your fish and it's 75 degrees, you're going to take the bag to 100. Your fish cannot live at 100 degrees. So you're going to want to make a little insulator so that you have a little bit of regulation and control, and you can trap that heat within this thermal package without cooking the fish. And so I get a little bit of a flow here. I'll have some air motion between my portion for my fish and my portion for my heat pack. And so I put some holes so I get some direct application. And I had this outside, and I did a test on a night where it went down to 45 degrees and I had daytime highs of about 78 degrees. I put a thermometer into the side of the box. The hottest that the box got using this method, sitting it not in the sun but on an outside deck overnight, was 82 degrees using this method. This little probe was in direct contact with the plastic bags. There was 3 bags in the box, this method, and the lowest that it went over the 3-day course of time was the last day when it was 51 degree overnight low, but the box was a 72-hour, and it was at its last 6 hours, and it went down to about 73, which is livable. Your angelfish and your other tropical fish, unless you have something super sensitive, they should pump right back from that. You should be able to adapt that when you receive it. And that was on the 3rd day at the 76th hour on a 72-hour heat pack. So that'll work for you. So you slip this in there, it looks like this. And you're going to take and you're going to have a 72-hour heat pack. So what happens with a 72-hour heat pack is you open this thing up. You can see that faint little bit of red. That red stripe is ability to let oxygen into this. Once this gets oxygen, it starts to cook. There's a thermal reaction. It does a controlled heating. There's a couple of different materials, some sawdust, some iron, some salt stuff. It makes a reaction. It'll go up initially to 115 degrees. You want to get this thing to 115 degrees as soon as possible. You want to put it in a brown paper bag about 4 hours before you're going to do your package. Close the bag, massage it a little, open the bag up, pack it in the bag, and let the bag sit for 3 or 4 hours so it gets to that maximum heat, because the initial temperature is 115 degrees. If you get to 115 degrees in the box, that could cause you problems, so you want to take a little of the heat out of it. Now, I take these and I stick them. There's an adhesive side to these. I put the adhesive on here and I slip it into the box so that I have a flat form so it won't slip down into the box, down into the bottom, and cause a problem. I want a nice even heat all the way through the thing. The other thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to be required to put what's in the box and how many. And you want to take this decal. This is a paper decal. I'm going to go over it with plastic to protect it so it doesn't smear. You want to stick that on your box. The other thing you're required to do is you're required to tell them that there's live fish in the box. You can order these from Walmart, Amazon, wherever. They're relatively inexpensive. You want to stick one of these on each side of the box. You're required to have 2. You can put 4 if you would like. I don't put one on the front. I put 2. If they say 2, that's the regulation. That's what I'm giving. So I also want to tell you that when you fold your box up, you want to make sure that you have this exposed. Don't cover this up. You're going to put a sticker on this box. You're going to put some other stuff. Leave this so that they can see it. Then they'll respect this box. And they know that this box meets the criteria. Your stickers meet the criteria. That meets the criteria. You're going to finish your taping almost identical on the top to the bottom. And you should be in pretty good shape. You're going to want to stick your label on here when you get it. And I'm going to show you the rest of the actual procedure, including the bagging of the fish, in a second video. I find that none of the fish I've ever received ever from anyone have met exactly what I'm doing. And I have looked at and reviewed for the ITSA box tests, and this is what they're requiring. So if we do it this way, we should have some better luck than if we don't. And I'll talk to you guys a little more in the next part 2 video. Thank you.